You are now watching, By the Minute, where we highlight unsolved, unidentified and missing cases across the nation. Today we head to the East Coast. Portland, Maine. December 23, 2005. The holidays can bring a range of emotions for people across the nation. Some people feel joy, others may feel sadness, and some may feel nothing at all. For one teenager, his feelings and whereabouts remain unknown. Siphat Chow, 19, a recent honor roll high school graduate from Portland High School, and would begin his next steps towards his future majoring in business at University of Maine at Orono. Siphat had not registered in spring classes at the university and was allegedly having some financial issues due to internet gambling. With support from his family, they wanted him to come home and be closer to them. Siphat obliged, and here is where the story would take an obscure turn. Siphat would be spending time with his family and would last be seen falling asleep on his parents' couch around 1 a.m. on Christmas Eve. This would be the last time he would be seen or heard from again. Siphat would leave his wallet, car and car keys behind. His family believes that this is very unlike him. Something is wrong and they do fear for his safety. Siphat is an Asian male, 5 feet 9 inches, weighing 143 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. At the time of his disappearance he was 19, and at the taping of this episode he was 37 years old. He was last seen wearing a red sweatshirt, blue jeans, Timberland boots, and possibly a black suede jacket and a beanie hat. He has a scar on his chin and goes by the nickname Fat. If you have any information about Siphat Chow's disappearance, please contact the Portland Police Department. Born, Massachusetts. June 30, 1996. A missing person case would leave off where a love story began. Patricia Manassian, a wife and mother, would be on a family vacation in Cape Cod. It would be the afternoon of July 1st when she would tell her family she was going to get the car washed. This would be the last time she was heard from again. Patricia had been having a tough time in her life, as she had been in a vehicular accident where she suffered head and back injuries that would cause her memory loss from time to time. She was also experiencing episodes of depression as a result of the accident and had taken steps towards treatment. Authorities would find that Patricia's minivan was not at the local gas station but parked at a restaurant where her and her husband had their first date 18 years ago at the time of her disappearance. Police would find her wedding rings, purse, credit cards, identification cards, keys and $12 in cash. Patricia's husband would also find a 15-page letter left in their second family car. In the letter, Patricia would write about how her family was better off without her. She would apologize for not being a good wife, parent and employee. She stated that she needed space and was unhappy with her life, but she loved her children and husband. Authorities believe that Patricia may have taken her own life by walking into the ocean and did canvass nearby beaches for her remains but have had no luck. The letter did not indicate Patricia wanted to end her life and has never had a history of wanting to do so. Patricia's husband believes that she may have started a new life under a new identity. There are reports that Patricia was allegedly seen in Brockton, Massachusetts area in April 1997. Patricia is a white female, 5 feet 2 inches, weighing 120 pounds, with brown hair and green hazel eyes. She was 37 at the time of her disappearance, and at the taping of this episode she would be 64 years old. She was last seen wearing gray sweatshirt and black stretch pants. Patricia was last known to be driving red/maroon 1994 Mercury Villager minivan with the Massachusetts license plate number 667 ZIS. If you have any information about Patricia's disappearance, please contact the Massachusetts State Police. Johnston, Rhode Island. March 29, 1990. A wife working on her marriage would mysteriously disappear, but the alleged suspect stopped working with investigators before taking his own life. Doreen Marfio, 34 at the time, a wife and was the purchasing director at Rhode Island School of Design. She would end up taking time away from her position and dedicating her full time to working on her marriage. Her husband would report his wife Doreen missing on March 29, 2 days after he claimed to have last seen her. Stephen stated on the day of Doreen's disappearance he would head home to eat lunch with Doreen and then head back to work. When he arrived at 4 p.m. he had not seen her and reported her missing 2 days later. Stephen believed that Doreen was having an affair and also paid private investigators to look into his marriage. He stated that Doreen would pack a suitcase with a week worth of clothes, took $600 and left. Investigators realized Doreen did not take her hair curlers, her 1984 Ford Tempo of her pet cats with her. They also did not find any of the adultery allegations against Doreen to be true. Many marriages across the nation do struggle, and Doreen's marriage was one of them. Investigators believe that Doreen did not leave on her own accord and her husband Stephen had something to do with her disappearance allegedly. Doreen was supposed to have a phone call with her mother that day and she did not. In June of 1990, police would receive 2 typewriter-written letters spoken in third person. One stated that Stephen strangled Doreen in the day of her disappearance and dumped her body in a pond in Providence, Rhode Island. The second letter would include cheating allegations against Doreen and include alleged partners, men's names from her job. Police would determine that the letters were written from a typewriter found in Stephen's mom's home. When confronted with the facts, Stephen stopped cooperating with investigators and hired an attorney. Yet this case takes another wicked turn for the worse. If you are enjoying learning more about these unsolved cases across the nation, we invite you to join our mission in bringing awareness. Knowing what's going on in your community helps keep everyone safe. Be sure to subscribe to not miss out on any episodes. You may have tips to solve the next case we feature. Now let's hop back into this case, but we have to fast forward about 9 years later in 1999. Stephen would tell his family he was going to go on vacation and straighten his life out. When he arrived back from vacation he would commit a treacherous act that he himself not be able to live with. Stephen would arrive home from his vacation and head to his ex-girlfriend's house where he would take her wound her new boyfriend, and then he would drive to Connecticut in a secluded reservoir and take his own life. He would leave a letter to his mother and in it her would express his feelings of sadness and guilt towards Doreen's disappearance, but he never admitted to anything involving a murder. Investigators do believe that Stephen is responsible in the disappearance of Doreen but have never been able to charge him. Doreen is a white female, 5 feet 7 inches, 115 pounds, with brown hair and green eyes. It is unknown what Doreen was wearing. Doreen's case remains open and we must keep her case out there and help authorities gain tips on where she may be. If you have any information about Doreen's disappearance, please contact the Johnston Police Department. Authorities are also asking that anyone with blood relation to Doreen to please contact them. Nashua, New Hampshire. April 20, 2019. Michael McLean, a graduate of Hampshire College with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, would have a career working at a non-profit called Easter Seals New Hampshire, that provides resources for people with disabilities, veterans and senior citizens. Michael would work with autistic children. On a night out with friends, things would get hazy after Michael stepped in to break up an altercation. Michael would be spending his time with friends at Tropical Lounge located at 14 West Hollis Street. Michael would see a female that he knew in the midst of an argument with another female. Michael would walk over to attempt to convince the female to leave the dispute. At the time, the police would arrive and the crowd would disperse. This is when Michael would be separated from his friends around 1:45 a.m. Things would begin to come strange when Michael would reach out to a few people. One being his boss. Michael would call his boss and state, "They're after me," more than one. Michael would also reach out to his neighbor via text. He would send 3 messages. The series of text would read, "Help LOL hour, what stood aloof," and "Eldritch bro." Authorities are not sure who or what Michael meant, but they do believe he was referring to his location, Eldridge being the street near where the car was located. Throughout the investigation, Michael would be seen on surveillance in his car. At 2 a.m. he was seen at a McDonald's. He was then seen entering and leaving a parking garage located riverfront landing in the area of Bancroft Street and the Merrimack River at 3:30 a.m. That would be the last known sighting of Michael. Witnesses believe they may have heard someone yelling for help from the Merrimack River near the Hudson side the same night of Michael's disappearance, but do not have proof that it was Michael. Michael was reported missing when his family was unable to get in contact with him on Easter. He is a black male, 5 feet 10 inches, weighing 190 pounds, with brown eyes and black hair. At the time of his disappearance he was 29 years old, and at the taping of this episode he would be 33. Michael's hair would be in cornrows, and he also wears green color contacts. He has a goatee and tattoos. Here you can see pictures. Here is the last image we have available of Michael before his disappearance. This is what he was last seen wearing. Michael remains missing, and his family, friends and community seek answers. Help us get more clarity on Michael's whereabouts. If you have any tips, please contact the Nashua Police Department. Waterbury, Connecticut. December 20, 2008. A man behind a crime scene that investigators detail as the worst they have ever seen, is lurking in the streets among us. During the portion of this segment we want to emphasize that viewer discretion is advised. Some communities have angels, people that are willing to lend a hand, a smile, or even an encouraging word. One community, Laura Orso, 85, would help residents of her Albanian community. Her friends would become worried when they were unable to hear from her, and one of her friends would head to her apartment and find her in a horrible state. Police would be called to the scene and find Laura Orso covered in blood, lying in her kitchen floor. Authorities on the scene would find Laura with multiple stab wounds. Autopsy would reveal the exact number being 37 wounds. When suspects commit crimes with knives, they are very likely to cut themselves with the slippage that is created from the blood of their victims. They are likely to wound themselves, and that's exactly what this suspect did. Police would find a second blood type and knew it belonged to the suspect. Police would get samples from the neighbors, and one neighbor's home would be the clue to let police know who committed this horrendous crime. Authorities would head to a residence and find out that a man that was staying there was acting erratic, had a drug problem, and recently stolen money from the residents to contribute to his habit. Authorities knew that the suspect in Laura Orso's murder's motive was robbery, as they had stolen money from her that she received in Christmas cards. Police would take a toothbrush from the scene, and it was an exact match to the murder's blood found at the scene. Authorities knew they were looking for Irvis McAlary. Police were headed to find the suspect and place him in custody. Detectives would find that Irvis purchased a bus ticket to St. Petersburg, Florida. But he would not arrive in Florida and stop in New York. Investigators would also fly to Albania and speak with authorities, and Irvis would be placed on Albania's most wanted list for murder. Investigators would also speak with a friend of Irvis, and it was alleged that he told his friend he had stabbed 2 people in Albania. We do not want anyone who would do something like this in our community, and we must keep our eyes open to make sure we get this suspect in custody. Irvis is described as a white male from Albanian descent, 5 feet 11 inches, weighing 190 pounds. At the time of the crime he was 21, and at the taping of the video he would be 36. Irvis is considered armed and dangerous, and it is important that you alert authorities if you see him. Police have also released age-enhanced photos. He may have had nose surgery due to his excessive heroin use. If you have any tips about this case or about the whereabouts of Irvis McAlary, contact In Pursuit 833-378-7783. Schuylerville, New York. November 24, 2015. A town councilman would leave his home and then never be heard from again. It was around 10 a.m. and sometime around 12 in the afternoon, at the residence of Fred Drum, which was located on Burgoyne Road. Frederick Drum, 68, at the time would be at his residence alone and would be headed out for a walk on his 170-acre property. Frederick would not be seen again. Frederick's family would notice that Frederick did take his wallet, but all of his cars would be at the home on the property. Frederick was the town councilman, youth baseball coach, a member of the town's Board of Assessment Review and a member of the town planning board. Frederick had recently retired and had plans to not run or be re-elected for the council and wanted to spend his free time traveling with his wife. Since Frederick's disappearance, his debit and credit cards have not been used. Police have searched his property and surrounding area with no success. Frederick is described as a white male, 5 feet 5 inches, 170 to 180 pounds, he has gray hazel eyes. It is unknown what Frederick was last seen wearing, but he often wore his camel hat as you can see in this picture here. If you have any tips about Frederick's disappearance, please contact the Saratoga County Sheriff's Office. Frederick's family has offered a reward for tips in this case. Clifton, New Jersey. September 20, 1999. Hakan Koyun, 28 at the time, used to work at a factory but was unemployed and would usually spend his day reading Turkish newspapers and spending time with friends and relatives. On September 20th, in 1999, Hakan would ask his brother to borrow his car so he could head to the store. His brother obliged, but this would be the last time that anyone had ever seen or heard from Hakan again. Hakan's family would report him missing, and 5 days later they would receive a clue to a mystery that would linger with them for years. On September 25, 1999, Hakan's brother's vehicle, a silver 1989 Mazda 626, would be found in a remote area. That location would be Adirondack Mountains. The car was found with the lights on, the battery dead, without gas and the keys still in the ignition. Inside, investigators would also find 2 packs of cigarettes, Parliament, a brand that Hakan was known to smoke, and a pack of Marlboros. Police and Hakan's family do not believe this is like him, and today we ask our viewers for support in getting answers to Hakan's whereabouts. Hakan is a Turkish white male, 6 feet 2 inches, 180 pounds, with light brown hair and brown eyes. He also has 2 scars on his forehead. Hakan was last seen wearing a black or gray short-sleeved collared shirt with gray stripes or a grid pattern design, khaki pants, and black leather dress shoes. If you have any tips about Hakan's disappearance, please contact the Clifton Police Department. Camden, Delaware. May 31, 2012. Lois Lorraine Rodriguez, 52 at the time, had an exciting career that allowed her to travel across the country to NASCAR events. Lois lived with her boyfriend at the time on Foxhole Road in Camden. On May 31, Lois would be working at the Dover International Speedway. Lois would complete her shift, and this was the last place she was reported to be seen. Lois' mother would not hear from her and she would file a missing persons report. Lois' boyfriend would state that she did not return home. This may not be uncanny for Lois to do, as she had a job where she traveled. Lois would also be known to meet people from online and stay with them for long periods of time. She was known to frequent Aberdeen, Maryland, and also Pennsylvania. Lois is missing. Lois is a white female, 5 feet 6 inches, 130 pounds, with blonde hair and blue eyes. If you have any tips in the disappearance of Lois, please contact the Delaware State Police. Ocean City, Maryland. January 31, 2005. A man on a work trip would mysteriously vanish and authorities suspect foul play. Eduardo Masala, 52, at the time, worked as a construction contractor that lived in Northern Virginia. Eduardo would receive a job for his business that would require him to travel to Ocean City, Maryland. Here he would also have a condo. Eduardo would take 2 of his employees with him on the trip. They would complete the roofing and siding installation and then would head to the Bull on the beach on January 31, 2005. This is the place that Eduardo and one of his employees was last seen. That employee being Jose Damian Hernandez. On February 3, 2005, Eduardo's family would report him missing. Authorities would head to Eduardo's condo and find a scene that would lead them to believe something happened to Eduardo. Inside Eduardo's condo appeared to be some sort of struggle that would focus in the master bedroom. Here police would find blood and spurts of blood in the kitchen. The master bedroom would be the center of the crime scene. Authorities would notice that a few things were missing from the condo. A large futon mattress with the beddings and sheets missing, and they would also discover a large knife was missing from the kitchen. Unfortunately, the amount of blood found at the scene would determine that Eduardo would not have been able to sustain his injuries. Police knew they wanted to talk to 2 people, Jose Damian Hernandez and Jose Roberto Orellana Romero. Jose Hernandez was last seen with Eduardo at the restaurant and police would investigate him thoroughly. They would find that Jose entered the U.S. illegally from El Salvador in 2005. Jose would be working with Eduardo, and when he was reported missing, Eduardo's credit card was still being used. Jose Hernandez would return the credit card to the family and alleged that Eduardo told him he could use it. Eduardo's family contacted the police and Jose Hernandez was charged with stolen property. At Jose Hernandez's apartment in Columbus, Ohio, police would find Eduardo's van. They would also find that Eduardo pawned some of Eduardo's tools the day after he disappeared. Jose Hernandez was sentenced to 5 years on the stolen property, and after his release he was deported back to El Salvador. The other employee, Jose Roberto Orellana Romero, is also a native of El Salvador and entered the U.S. illegally. Jose Romero has not been seen or heard from since this event, and police would like to speak with him for questioning in regards to the theft and disappearance of Eduardo. At this time, authorities believe Jose Romero may have connections to Ohio or has fled back to El Salvador. Authorities have declared Eduardo deceased, but his body still remains missing. Police believe he may have been dumped somewhere within a 30-mile radius of Ocean City. Eduardo is described as a Hispanic male and a native of Uruguay. He was 52 at the time of his disappearance. If you have any tips in this case, please contact the Ocean City Police Department 410-723-6604. South Boston, Virginia. May 16, 2009. An Army veteran would be missing. The person she was last seen with was someone very close to her. Hattie Brown, 48, was a retired Army veteran that served and protected our country in Operation Desert Storm. Hattie came from a big family and had 11 siblings. She would be living in the Halifax area and receive a call from one of her relatives in the early morning hours for a ride. Hattie would receive a call from her nephew. Her nephew would ask his Aunt Hattie to pick him up from a Sheetz gas station located at the intersection of Route 501 and Route 58. Hattie's car, a brown 2003 Volkswagen Jetta, would be seen on security footage at 2:33 a.m. Hattie's nephew would ask his aunt to drop him off at a party. At this location is where Hattie was last seen in her car. Hattie's nephew would make it home, but Hattie would not make it to her residence. She would be reported missing on May 16. That summer in July, police would get a clue about Hattie's disappearance. Hattie's brown Volkswagen Jetta would be found abandoned and burned on a farm in southeastern Halifax. The car would not be able to grant any evidence as it was completely burnt to a crisp. But detectives would determine some key facts from the vehicle. Fact 1. Hattie's car was parked at the location for some time. Fact 2. The farm was abandoned. These key facts would mean that whoever had something to do with Hattie's disappearance is a local and knows that placing the car at that location would deter detectives from finding it sooner. Police are suspecting foul play in Hattie's disappearance and do have a suspect in mind when it comes to the connection of Hattie's disappearance, but with tips from the community we are one step closer to getting answers to Hattie's family. Hattie is described as a black female, 5 feet 4 inches, 155 pounds. She does require medication, which that and her purse would be left at her residence. Hattie was last seen wearing a sleeveless shirt with pants and a white stripe. Help us find Hattie. Please submit any tips about Hattie's disappearance to Halifax County Sheriff's Office or Virginia State Police. High Point, North Carolina. September 8, 2010. A transient woman's family is seeking answers on where she could be. Leah and Ziegler, 40 at the time, would always check in with her sister every few weeks, just letting her know that she was okay. When Leah's sister hadn't heard from her, she reported her missing. Regardless of Leah's living space, she kept a routine of checking in with her sister, and when routine stopped, there is a cause for concern. The details regarding Leah's disappearance are limited, but this is where we, the community, come together to get answers for Leah's whereabouts. Leah was known to frequent the High Point, North Carolina area and was last seen on September 8, 2010. If you have happened to be in the High Point or surrounding areas, please keep a lookout for Leah. If you have any tips about her disappearance, please contact the High Point Police Department. North Charleston, South Carolina. October 11, 2007. A young woman working hard to take care of her kids would send a series of texts when she wasn't really a texter at all. Viridiana Maldonado, 21, mother who had recently divorced and came back home to live with her mother and sister as she was escaping a domestic violence situation. With Viridiana's courage, she moved back to South Carolina from Tacoma, Washington. She was working at a restaurant named La Norteña located on Rivers Avenue. After her shift, she would head home, change her shirt, and around 10:30 to 11 she would tell her mother and sister that she was headed out with her ex-sister-in-law. Around 1 a.m., her family would get a text stating that she was out drinking with a guy named Miguel. They would also get texts a few hours later stating that she didn't feel well and she was going back to Mexico. Viridiana's family knew this was unlike her, as she was not known to text. Her family contacted police to file a missing persons report. Authorities would get in contact with Viridiana's ex-sister-in-law. She would state that she was not with Viridiana and hadn't seen her in 2 weeks. She was also unsure why Viridiana would say she was with her. Detectives wouldn't stop there in Viridiana's disappearance and would find that her bank account was closed. Someone would call the bank and close the accounts. They would also get a deposit of the money withdrawn in a check sent to their home. The check would be sent to the home where Viridiana shared with her ex-husband. Viridiana had only been in South Carolina for a month before leaving Tacoma. Through phone records, police would find that Viridiana's ex-husband had visited South Carolina just days before Viridiana's disappearance. They would also determine that it was him who closed Viridiana's bank account. He would then flee the country and head to the Dominican Republic after Viridiana's disappearance. Viridiana's family would be in a custody battle over the children that Viridiana shared with her ex-husband. Her ex-husband would travel back into the United States and he would be immediately placed in custody for drug trafficking. He now sits in custody for those charges. But as far as Viridiana's case, she still remains missing while police expect foul play. Viridiana is a Hispanic female from Mexico, 5 feet 4 inches, 115 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. She was 21 at the time of her disappearance and would be 37 at the taping of this episode. Viridiana was last seen wearing a shirt and pants. Please, if you have any tips or may have seen Viridiana the night of her disappearance, please contact the North Charleston Police Department. Atlanta, Georgia. August 28, 2003. Dimitral Collins, 32, mother and real estate loan officer, would be enjoying the hustle of bustle that life has to offer in a big city like Atlanta, and in big cities it seems you're always on the move. Dimitral would be finding time in her busy life as a newly separated woman to run some errands for her family. She would leave her home in Atlanta and would borrow her friend's red 1994 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Here is where things take a turn and leave a family awaiting answers. Dimitral would not return home, but with retracing her steps, authorities would find that she was last seen early in the afternoon on 600 block of Mayland Avenue. Dimitral's mother would talk to her at 7 o'clock that evening, and from here no one would know where Dimitral was. Dimitral was declared missing. It wouldn't be until 3 weeks later that the car that Dimitral was driving was found abandoned near 3500 block of Clubhouse Drive East in Decatur, Georgia. Detectives would find that the same month that Dimitral vanished, she was thinking about reconciling with her husband, and he would move back in with Dimitral. Dimitral was also allegedly seeing another man while she was separated. At this time, no one has been named as a suspect in this case, and while authorities continue to investigate, we will continue to keep Dimitral's case in the light. Dimitral is described as a black female, 5 feet 6 inches, 125 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. She has a tattoo on her neck with a dove and a rose and the name DD under it. She also has another tattoo with a rose on her right back shoulder. She was last seen wearing a blue denim skirt, blue denim sandals, and a brown short-sleeved sweater. If you have any tips about Dimitral's whereabouts or disappearance, please help us get answers to her family who misses her dearly. Contact the Atlanta Police Department. Fort Pierce, Florida. March 3, 2017. Omario Carlisle, 36, would live at 1600 block of Avenue South in Fort Pierce, Florida, with his mother. Omario would tell his mother that he was feeling anxious and nervous. She would feel the same the following day. Omario is a black Jamaican male, 5 feet 7 inches, 175 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Omario does require medication. He was last seen wearing a green t-shirt with 1994 on the front, blue and orange shorts, and black sneakers. There are few details about Omario's disappearance, but together from the community we can gain more tips. If you have any information about Omario's whereabouts, please contact St. Lucie County Public Safety Department. 521,705 people were reported missing just in 2021. Authorities need our help with getting tips about these missing persons. That's where we, the community, come in. People from our communities across the nation are missing, and some are unaccounted for amongst the various databases provided around the nation. In order to help our families across the nation, we can simply do so by spreading awareness. Keep these names and stories in the light. If a case reaches you in your area, please talk about it with people you know and encourage people with information to get those tips to authorities. Thanks for watching By the Minute News. Together, we can all keep our communities safe, by the minute.